And would you mind to talk a little bit of those highlights or those aha moments that you've had?
I think a really big aha moment for me has been around doing things long and strong. I traded skills for skills. I started this contra trading movement that I got really into, where it's like, I don't have the money to do something, but I'm not going to let it stop me from achieving the outcome that I want to get. So I've been working in the south of France as a massage therapist, and I'd had a landscaping business before. And so a guy in town who owned a recording studio, I said to him, he was always in pain, I was like, I'll fix your back and your garden if you record me. And so I made an album, I started recording, and I met this band. You know, there isn't actually a fail. You don't do it right and you don't do it wrong. It's like, you're just doing it.
There was a time where you've been twice singing for the Prince of Monaco, which I find fascinating. I want to hear about this story.
And I also had to like serve dinner, and just I was very resourceful, total Kiwi move, you know. So my job was to answer the door, and all the guests had come, and we were sitting up on this roof looking over the water and up to the palace, and Prince Albert was the last person to arrive. And I was like, what do you say to the king? Like, it feels really funny to say Your Highness being a Kiwi. It kind of sounds like it's made up, like out of a fairy tale. So
my guest today is Anna van Riel, an award-winning singer, songwriter, and vocal coach who lives in the South Island in Lake Hāwea. Her music carries the flavors of Billie Holiday's Bonnie Tyler, and mixed with her own stories from growing up and traveling the world. She is the creator of Waste Free Wanda, an 80s-inspired eco-rock opera that reached more than 20,000 Tamariki for children. And she runs Nook Road Productions, bringing vocal coaching and workshops to rural communities. Anna also started the Wanda Foundation, using the arts to inspire environmental changes. And along the way, she sang for the Prince Albert of Monaco twice, performed at the world's highest music festival, and picked up 7 TUI Award nominations. She's known for her cheeky and warm energy, and her new album for grown-ups is another step in her journey. Hello, Anna. I'm so happy to have you. Welcome to the show.
good morning. Thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here.
It is. I met you a few weeks ago in one of this wonderful workshop, vocal, and I've been blown away that I've been singing.
Was she?
And I think we're going to talk about that because there is a lot of fear around the voice and singing, but let's not go too much into it in advance. What I would love to ask you first is, what is your biggest passion right now?
What is my biggest passion right now? That's such an exciting question, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I think my biggest passion right now is supporting people to understand that their voice is an instrument, and everything is a position, and a position can be changed.
Everything has a position. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I can. So we'll probably talk about this throughout this session, but yes, everything is a position. So I've been taking this approach with what I've learned around the human voice, because I've had a lot of big breakthroughs myself after having quite a bit of vocal trauma, and I learned from understanding mechanically what was going on with my body and how to use my whole body as an instrument, that I was in a certain position that wasn't supporting me to create good sound. But then I also realized that attached to the position of my physical self was a position in my mind, like an idea about what that looked like. For example, I can't sing, or I'm not good enough, or I'll never be able to do this. And so, yeah, I'm just really excited at this concept. It seems really simple and not all that exciting, but actually when you do a little deep dive on it and you realize that everything's just a position and a position can be changed, it kind of frees you up to do anything and go anywhere.
Wow, that sounds very interesting. Yeah, and I think we're going to dive a little bit more onto that.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be great that you bring us back to. Well, I'm curious because you're a singer and you're a songwriter, so obviously it's something that came up, I'm pretty sure, quite early. Would you, yeah, tell us maybe your journey around that?
Yeah, I was talking to a friend about this the other day, actually. She said, "Oh, when did you start?" I've been working with this gorgeous friend. She's from North Carolina, and we've been doing strategy sessions together. She's a strategist, but very creative. And so she was like, "When did you first start making music or hearing words?" And I just always go back to this core memory of sitting on a swing, actually, and this is a bit of a funny memory, but I remember, we had chickens in the backyard, and I've got 2 big brothers, and we're all 1 year apart, so we're super close in age, and I think of myself when I think of myself as a child, I just remember feeling quite light about everything, like, always singing and wandering around in gumboots and, quite light about everything, and I'd gone out to check on the chickies, and I saw that they had blood on their feet, and I didn't know what it meant, but I must have been 3. Like, I think I must have been 3 when I lived in that house, because we moved shortly after. And I went to tell my dad, and whatever it was that was going on for the chickens, meant that the chickens had to have their heads cut off,
Yeah.
which is a bit dramatic, but that's what had to happen. And for whatever reason. And I remember my dad's is just like, "All right, this is life, you kids, come on out of the backyard." And we're all standing there as a family, like witnessing the chickens losing their heads. And my brothers are standing like side by side, shoulder to shoulder, just like about the chickies. And I was swinging really high on this rope swing on a big old gum tree. I can remember the smell in my mind. And being fascinated that the chickens could still flap while they had no heads. And
Yeah.
I made up this song and I think it went something like, "Chicken goes bark bark, chicken goes bleh." But I actually remember the feeling of like acknowledging that I'd made up words, like even though it was about chickens losing their head and it was all very gruesome, it was just liberating. It was like, oh, you can make a song. You can make up words. Like, I just made that up and I just was fascinated at the idea. And so my friend said to me, "Do you have any other memories?" And my next memory was sitting on a swing again on my grandparents' backyard, and they must have been 4. And I was making up a song about just nonsense. It was something to do with the Muppet Babies. But yeah, but I'd never kind of twigged that both of my earliest memories of songwriting was sitting on a swing. And she was like, "Oh, maybe I should go sit on a swing again and do that."
For your next song.
Yeah.
Wow, so it started quite early.
Yeah, it really did. And I remember, so my parents are both musicians. Well, they both play music and sing. And so my mum sings classical and opera. And so she's grown up with parents who sang, always singing opera, and Concert FM was always on in the kitchen at my grandparents' house. Both of my grandparents on both sides are Dutch. And so my mum's parents, they had like Concert FM and this kind of influence. And my grandfather was always listening to records, classical records and humming along. And I remember my grandmother, my grandfather would say things like a Figaro, Figaro, Figaro while he was cleaning. And I never knew what it meant until I watched the Marriage of Figaro and his wife is always picking on him. It took me till my adult years to figure out. He was kind of having a wee quip at my grandma for picking on him and Figaro, Figaro. And then yeah, my dad plays the guitar and has a beautiful kind of country folk voice. And he was in bands when I was a kid growing up, and we always had the guitar out round the bonfire, and I loved that. So I've got quite interesting influences of classical and country folk and yeah, that kind of thing. So yeah, it definitely was always in our house, just music. Music was a really important part of our house. And when I spent a lot of time with grandparents, and Dad's parents always played kind of like really dorky, strange, old carnival style Dutch folk music that, they'd have friends over and drink schnapsy things and get coffee. Everything smelled of coffee, and the pot belly was going, and there were these old vinyls that would play with old folk music. So it had some really interesting influences from an early age.
Wow. And when did you know it was your career?
Yeah, do you know what? That's such a good question. If I was really honest with myself, I think I always knew it was my career. But it just took me a really long time to give myself permission to say I'm a musician. It's not a real job. To be a musician was a lot of the messaging that I got, and it's like not from my parents actually. My parents were always like, "Oh, you just do you, boo." They were totally cool about it, but I definitely felt like it was a long way to get from being, you know, where I was to actually earning an income and being in the joy of music, and actually giving myself permission to do it. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so there was just a few breakthroughs that happened, and even when I started doing it, there's been a really big permission piece, which has been led me to this. Everything's a position, and a position can be changed, and kind of having those breakthroughs has kind of led me to be more in my role as a musician and supporting others to do the same.
Yes. Yeah, I love that. And would you mind to talk a little bit of those highlights or those aha moments that you've had? Because I mean, for my listeners, it's all about being inspired on how we can live from a passion, from a gift. And obviously you have this gift, and it was also in your family. And it would be fantastic to show people, okay, this was my highlight moment, or that was a little bit my challenge to start with. And this is because of this aha moment, suddenly I made the decision that actually it's my career. I want to do it.
I think a really big aha moment for me has been around doing things long and strong, and you don't actually understand how important the breakthrough is when you've been doing something long and strong, because you have to have been doing it long and strong. Like, you have to have been doing it for a long time to have the realization that, I'm still doing it and I've come this far, and so that's been a really interesting one. I remember I went to music school. I'd been traveling. I've traveled a lot, and I'd been traveling in the south of France. I worked on super yachts, and I was, you know, traveling around Europe. And I decided to come back to New Zealand and go to music school. And I did the first year, which was a certificate year, and that just gave you a taste of everything. And I was like, oh, this is great. I'm going to do the bachelor. And of course, once you start with the bachelor, it's kind of a bit more like, now you have to knuckle down and do the work. And so I started my bachelor. I got through the first year, but during that whole process, I met all these incredible musicians and all of these like-minded people. And I got really impatient with studying. I was like, we were making music. I started a band. We were traveling around and getting paid gigs. Um, I traded skills for skills. I started this contra trading movement that I got really into, where it's like, I don't have the money to do something, but I'm not going to let it stop me from achieving the outcome that I want to get. So I've been working in the south of France as a massage therapist, and I'd had a landscaping business before. And so a guy in town who owned a recording studio, I said to him, he was always in pain. I was like, I'll fix you back and your garden if you record me. And so I made an album. I started recording, and I met this band, and then I got really impatient. So I was like beauty school dropped out of music school and ended up touring with the 4-piece band. We were called Bellbird and the Handsome Gypsies. And, we got together the money somehow from gigs to buy a tour van. So we all put in and we bought this tour van from this wrecker guy who was a bit like a dad. He really looked after us. So we got this great van, and my dad loaned us his PA system, and we just like made stuff happen. And I didn't realize how brave I was, and that I was really, that was just something. We were so courageous to just go out there and just give it a crack and just learn as we went.
Yeah.
But I think there was also a big piece around doing it together so we could learn, but also staying in the shadow of like not having to take all the responsibility myself in case I messed up or I wasn't good enough. It's like I could share the load, which was beautiful, but I was also really scared to do my own thing. I felt quite afraid of that. And so I think just part of the journey and going long and strong is actually seeing that I'm still doing it, and there isn't actually a fail. You don't do it right and you don't do it wrong. It's like you're just doing it. When you're making music or you're doing anything creative or you're doing anything at all and you're doing it your way, then you're in it, This is life. It's not like there's an end result or you're going to get somewhere. And I think I was always thinking, once I do this, then I'll be better. Or once I do this, I'll get somewhere. And there's an end outcome and it looks like this. But through this long and strong, what I thought I was headed for and what was important and what meant success as a musician weren't my values. They didn't matter, like being famous or, like big success and big money and glitzy music videos. It wasn't why I made music. And I didn't actually realize that until I got out and I had more experiences, and I realized what is the part of this whole experience that brings me the most joy. And it was actually just about being with people and sharing stories and getting other people interacting. That was a really strong value of mine. It's like, well, how can we do this together? How can my my craft and what I'm doing invite you into my community and kind of leave a legacy of connection and creativity where we're all helping each other to shine a little bit brighter. So yeah, that's been a really exciting pivot for me because it's led me down a road with my music that I didn't think I would do, and that's I've become a practitioner, a vocal practitioner, but it also supports me to do my own craft and perform and invite people to be part of what I'm doing. So yeah, it all ties in beautifully together. I've been really grateful for that.
I'd like to take a small moment of your time to offer you something that can really help you further and give you a chance to start making a real and tangible change in your life. I've created a new money blueprint, a program that helps you release old money beliefs and step into a healthier relationship with abundance. It's simple with practical exercises you can do anytime, and it's powerful with hypnosis recording that I have created using NLP, AD sound, ancient wisdom, and also Simpson protocol. You can use it while you are walking, during quiet time, or even as you fall asleep. Each time, you will be dissolving old patterns and opening new possibilities. So if you're ready to shift your mindset around money, the link is waiting in the show notes. And now, let's go back to our interview.
Yeah, and I really like the idea that you wrote on your bio that you've been drawn to community connection, and it seems to be that what you are talking about. And is it because of that, because you've been working in a group, in a band that help you to feel more confident, and is something that you want to share to the community? Why are you so passionate about the community connection?
That's a good question. I think some of us are, we have different qualities that we're born with. And I think that's part of my love language is it's really important to feel that whatever I do has a flow-on effect that's beneficial, like getting the most bang for my buck. Like, maybe it's because I'm Dutch and Dutch are thrifty and it's like, how much value can I get from this thing that I'm putting effort into? But it's the same with, I think, not even just music, with anything that I do. I got into governance when my children were little, just from joining playgroup. It was really interesting, just joining the community playgroup and helping out. And I got invited onto the board of trustees for the playgroup. And the idea was that, you volunteer your time and whatever you do gives back to the community. And, it benefits for years to come. And it's a bit like permaculture and gardening. They say that whatever you do in your garden, if you do it well, your garden should be nourished for 7 years ahead. So you might not even be here in 7 years' time, but you're leaving a legacy of nourishing quality soil for the next person to grow their food in. So I sort of see community a bit like permaculture. And my husband's mother had actually, when my husband's brother was a wee baby, she had purchased the local post office, which had been decommissioned, and worked with the whole community to purchase the post office so that it could become the playgroup. And it's like that work that she did meant that my children had a playgroup that they could play in. And I kind of got a sense of, wow, whatever we do now can have such a powerful flow-on effect in the future. So I felt really proud and kind of sentimental about being part of playgroup and leaving that legacy, because my children's grandmother had done it and they've been here for several generations, and maybe my children will play a role in making sure that children in the future can keep playing at that playground. So I understood the power of, whatever you do, it allowed me to connect with community and have a core friendship group and support my children with their needs and leave something behind that, that was so valuable to the community. And it's like, I love this feeling. I want to have this feeling in every aspect of my life, where it's like it's valuable and more people benefit from it than just me. And so I noticed as I was touring with my music, it's like I want to just not just leave. I mean, it's enough to just go and sing music and be creative and do a concert, but I wanted it to leave something behind that felt of value to others. And so I started doing workshops, adding in little ukulele workshops or other little workshops. And I think it led me down the trail of singing, because it's something I can do in a concert is get people singing along. It's like, oh, here's something I could teach you in the middle of my concert. And then people are like, that felt great. I'd like to do more of that. And so that kind of segued into a workshop. So I do my workshop and then people stay on for the concert, and then they've already learned a song, and then we're all singing together, and it's a lot of fun.
Oh, wow. That's so cool. But to be honest, like I've done your 2 hours workshop with Rick, and I was quite blown away. When you said at the end, oh, we're all going to be singing, I was like, I'm not going to be singing. And you just brought us so naturally and understanding the voice with so many exercises or breath and I don't know, just the way you brought it, it was just natural and it was so much fun that I actually could hear him as a man, I'm singing quite loud. I was so surprised, I just put my finger there because I wanted to hear him. I was like, oh, wow, this is my voice. Because I've been traumatized when I was young about my voice, like when I was singing, it wasn't the right place, and then I decided to believe that it was true, and yeah. So thank you for offering that. It was quite interesting.
Yeah. Isn't it funny that I say to my students, I have a mini Martin, which is a little guitar. It's a little travel guitar, and it's quite a powerful little guitar. I love it. My husband bought it for me for my 40th birthday. I know you didn't think I was 40 yet, did you? But anyway. But Ed Sheeran has the same guitar. He plays the same guitar. And, I say to my students, I can say, well, my guitar doesn't sound like Ed Sheeran when I play it. And I can take it back to the shop and I can blame the guitar and I can just swap it. And I don't feel personal about the guitar. I could do the same with a flute or a piano or anything. But as soon as it comes to us personally, we are so hard on ourselves. And I say to my students, your voice is an instrument, and there is no other instrument in the whole universe that is just like you in your voice. But if we understand mechanically how the voice works, we can stop giving ourselves a hard time about not being good enough and taking it personally, because we become intelligent vocalists. We start to understand mechanically what it is that makes our voices work really well. And it was a really big journey for me to get to that place of breaking down that conditioning and that programming around the voice. And I just see it in every workshop. I don't know if we said it in the workshop you were in, but I was like, put your hand up if you got told when you were a child that you couldn't sing. And it's quite remarkable, especially I notice menopausal and postmenopausal women. It's quite cliche. We have this story about being little girls and somebody telling us that we'll never sing in the choir, or you'll never be a singer, or you'll never be good enough at singing. And we take it into our lives and then reach this point where we finally kind of go through our, metamorphosis and go, oh my goodness, I've waited my whole life to sing based on what someone told me who was unqualified. Someone unqualified told me right back when I was a little girl, and I let that hold me back from the joy of using my vocal instrument. And so, yeah, that's been quite a journey to understand mechanically what that looks like, and being able to find the words and the tools as a very kind of like, I go off on tangents, as you probably already noticed, and being, trying to find the words and then the visuals, so that I'm adding these components that people can hear it, they can see it, and then they can feel it in their body and become intelligent vocalists, and then go, I don't even need to judge myself, because mechanically I understand what happens, and then the joy and the being and the feeling just come as a default, because we can treat ourselves more like an instrument from the offset. And I'm not saying that we have to be like, I'm an instrument, I'm not a person. It doesn't work like that. But yeah, you couldn't do that if you tried. But it definitely has helped me hugely, to understand mechanically what's happening in my body, so that I can feel more and actually just enjoy the experience of singing a whole lot more. It's been awesome.
Would you go back to this trauma? I think you were saying at the beginning, like body trauma that you've had, and it's probably what you talked during the workshop, because I think it's very important, and we are the heart of a lot of people that are scared to sing. And I really love the idea of, yes, it is an instrument, and it's all about practicing and having fun. And I think it's what you are bringing as well in your workshop, is that you're bringing the fun part of it, and because you're using all those different kinesiology, visual and all that sort, it really helps to talk to everyone. So it will be quite interesting for people to understand where you're coming from, and why you have created this incredible, pretty cool workshop.
Thank you. Yes, so like if I were to go right back to when I was little, I had quite full-on asthma as a little kid. And so I grew up down in Invercargill originally. I'm in Lake Hāwea now. But my parents were so young. My mum had me at age 20, and I was the third. I had these very vibrant young parents, and they worked so hard. And they would buy these old beat up houses and renovate them and work, we would clean bricks from the gas works and all of this stuff and always working in these old beat up houses and turn them into these gorgeous houses.
Wow.
But they were cold and they were damp. These old houses were cold and damp and dusty and full of dust mites. And I remember having a lot of respiratory stuff. And I remember the scrim, would peel off the wallpaper and it was just scrim. And the scrim would be flapping on the inside of the house. It was so drafty. And, when you're a kid, you just, it just is what it is. But when I think back now, it was like deep South New Zealand. It was freezing.
Wow.
And then we had one of those old open fires. So most of the heat just went up the chimney. It was freezing cold. And so I had, a lot of respiratory stuff that got me into quite a thoracic breathing pattern. So when I say thoracic, I mean just, if you think of your whole lungs as two big balloons, I was really just breathing into the top part because I was shallow breathing because I was often just like jammed up, stuck, like struggling to breathe. And then I kind of went out into the world and I toured with my band and I did all of that stuff, but I didn't actually know that I wasn't activating my diaphragm and using the full capacity of my lungs. And another thing is I'd been told that I was a soprano. So I was always singing in quite a high head mechanism and kind of a sweet, fluty voice. But as I was aging and breathing thoracically, I was losing a lot of stability and, I was losing that kind of crystal clear, clean, youthful voice. And I was moving, my voice was maturing and it was looking for more warmth. It was looking to go to a place that was more, that it had more roundness and fullness, but I didn't have the toolbox to get there. And so my voice would kind of glitch on me and I would get a lot of vocal fatigue from hitting really hard against these teeny weeny vocal folds. So your vocal folds, as we mentioned in the workshop, they're just like the size of these little moons on your thumbnails. I've been gardening, my nails are grubby. But yeah, they're just tiny and, and I'd just been hitting really hard against these tiny vocal folds from the top part of my lungs. And so I hadn't really been set up for success. I'd had a lot of voice lessons. I'd started a first year as a vocal major and nobody addressed the anatomy of my voice. Nobody told me what my voice looked like. If I was doing a guitar lesson and learning a guitar, everyone would tell me what the bridge was, what the neck was, what the tuning pegs were, how the guitar worked. But it's this funny old paradigm with the voice. We really don't get set up with, hey, here's what your voice looks like. Here's a video of a stroboscopy so you can see what your vocal folds look like. And here is mechanically what's happening with your voice as the ear passes by your vocal folds. This is when you're in head mechanism, your vocal folds are vibrating over 800 times per second or, just information like that arms you. It helps you to feel prepared as a vocalist. None of that was ever given to me, not in vocal lessons, nothing.
Right.
Vocal lessons, I was paying for all of that stuff. And so what I mentioned in the voice workshop that you attended was that in 2010, I got pregnant with my first child and I had my first ultrasound kind of late in the pregnancy because my husband and I were living in Australia and we came home. We were actually engaged. We'd been engaged for a while and then we got pregnant. And so we came home to get married and we just thought, it's okay that I'm pregnant. We'll just get married while I'm pregnant. And I had saved my ultrasound to have with my mum. I really wanted my mum to be there. And we were really poor at the time. And so my husband had gone back to an old building company, a mate of his he used to work for. And he picked up some hours while we came home for 5 weeks to get married, just so we could make ends meet. And I went with my mum to have the ultrasound and he was going to come in his lunch break and he was running late. And so the sonographer had the thing on my belly and we were finding the baby and then she kind of honed in on it and her face dropped. And my husband wasn't there and I said to her, what? Why are you looking like, what's going on? Why are you looking like that? And she said, I don't know what I'm looking at, but your baby's not supposed to look like that. And I was just like, And then my husband walked in the door and Mum and I just like, just bawling. And that started this huge medical journey where I got, we went back to Australia and packed everything up and immediately moved home. It was like, we need family. I need, our medical system and support here. And so I got flown back and forth to Christchurch and had all these scary procedures to find out what was going on. And in that time, they were like, your baby's got, we're going to find out. We're pretty confident that there's 97% chance that your child has chromosomal abnormalities and you should terminate this pregnancy. And I was kind of tuning in because, being a mum, I'd always knew I was going to be a mum. And I was like, yeah, I'm not getting that. It's not what I'm getting from my baby. When I talk to my baby, we're okay. And so they were really like, we really encourage you to terminate. And in the end, I was like, we're not going to talk about this anymore. My baby and I are okay. I've checked in with my child, and my child's telling me we're going to be okay. Anyway, they did this horrible thing called amniocentesis where they put a humongous needle into your womb and take amniotic fluid through like the skin, the belly. It's very dangerous. It's horrible. Anyway, they found out there were no chromosomal abnormalities, and my baby had actually formed in the womb with her liver, stomach, and intestines in a sac outside of her body. So it was pretty major. It was a condition called a giant omphalocele, and it was like a really large one. I hadn't really seen one so big. And so we knew that I was going to have a cesarean because her liver was out and I couldn't birth her. And then it turns out that the whole medical team were going to Christchurch, and then the earthquake happened and they said, you can't come here anymore. So the reason I'm sharing this story is that through all of this experience, there were so many big things happening all the time that I really emphasized this thoracic breathing pattern because I was kind of in fight or flight. And then Matilda, who's now 14 and really amazing and doing so great, she was born and immediately stuffed full of wires and tubes and needles, and we went on this humongous medical journey. I brought her home at 5 months old, but we still got chop it out with collapsed lungs and all of these big things. And they were incredibly rough with me when they took her out, and which, they had a nerve in my spine with the big epidural needle. And then they were really rough with me because they didn't know what they were going to be dealing with. And then Matilda, had to be resuscitated a few times. And it was just like, go, 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 go. It was just really intense on my whole nervous system and my whole breathing pattern. And so coming out the other end of that, it was understanding mechanically what was going on, that the fascia, which is the stuff that moves between the skin and the tissue, the muscle and the organs, the fascia for me had been cut. And that line, abdominal line where they take a baby out, is directly connected to the voice. And that hidden nerve in my spine, which had jammed up my hips. So I was in this thoracic breathing pattern and not breathing, fully. I was probably quite PTSD from having been in such an intense environment for so long, like on high alert with a wee baby. And then just the whole physical thing that was going on in my body, the pain and just feeling discomfort, it got me in this thoracic breathing pattern. And so when I tried to sing again, I would just be in this short, sharp breathing pattern and hit really hard against my vocal folds, and I completely lost my voice within an hour. On my way to it, I started gigging and I'd just lose my voice. And I really felt grief from not being able to sing. I'd really taken for granted that everything I did, doing the dishes, digging in the garden, pushing the baby in the pushchair, every single thing I did and had always done had been accompanied by humming or singing or just making sound. It's like a self-tuning mechanism. It was just part of who I was, and I didn't know I was doing it. I think my mum does the same thing. It's just always a melody, always a song, and always words, always pulling a song out of the air. And all of a sudden, I just felt blocked. I just couldn't do it. So it led me on this huge journey of exploration and finding the right mentors because there was no postnatal care. And when I went to a specialist who looked at my vocal folds with a camera, he told me what was going on, but gave me no tools or solutions on how to fix it. So through this discovery and this exploration, I met these phenomenal women, just a series of remarkable women who taught me tools on, I learned EFT, like I learned tapping, I learned ways to release tension from my body. And through that, I also learned the mechanics of the voice, just anatomically understanding what was going on. And when I had that toolbox of understanding what it looked like, what was mechanically happening for me, and why I kept getting stuck in the same pattern of losing my voice and understanding how to change it in a kind and gentle and supportive way, all of a sudden everything changed. But the big aha for me was like, why did I not learn this? Why doesn't everybody learn this? It's like, why don't we learn how to manage money? Like, why don't we learn how to eat nutritiously? Like, this is a foundational, fundamental tool, not just for living our best life. It's for just being healthful and communicating and singing with joy and, just having more fun singing. And so once I understood what was happening, I realized it was the mechanical parts that gave me the freedom. I had no problem feeling into things. I was always sensing things and feeling it and, tuning in. I was okay with all of that. I was good at that, but actually mechanically I hadn't been given that toolbox. And so once I understood what it looked like, I realized that all my life, if anything was really mechanical, often it was given to me with only one part. So someone was speaking at me, but there was no visual to go with it and no physical action. And so I thought I was a bit thick because I didn't understand. I was like, I must be a bit slow. But as soon as the visual aid was added, and then particularly the visual aid along with the explanation and physically doing it, I realized I was really smart and I totally knew what to do. And that there must be a lot of other people who feel the same as me. And I think a lot of creative people, I've got friends who you can tell them, you can do physics with them, you can do, mathematical equations and they can visualize it in their mind's eye. I need to see it written on the board. So I realized I mustn't be the only one who feels this way. And so I started putting it together. It's like, what are the steps? If I were to start right at the beginning and set my body up as an instrument, what would I need to explain to people? What would they need to visually see, understand, and feel? And then it was just like, oh my goodness, it was like a breakthrough moment. And I think that has changed how I approach music and songwriting for myself, but just how it's helped me to connect with community by helping people to find their voice and have more freedom and ease and also be more kind and gentle. And everything is just a position and a position can be changed. So instead of saying, oh, I suck, that fails. I failed, that was awful. We just change positions, but you can't change positions if you don't know what it looks like, if you don't know what the position that you're changing to. And then with that comes a change of position and how you think about it. And then you become more kind and gentle with yourself because you realize you were judging and you didn't need to. You become an intelligent vocalist. Yeah.
I'm always blown away how life brings us the perfect challenge. And when we understand and we start to go through the challenge and on the other side, we realize that it was a bloody good lesson of life that that will help us to create something. And this is so powerful, your story, because through your very challenging journey that has been quite long, you've been able to find exactly what was missing in your own journey, and now you are going toward this path of helping others. uh, that's what I love.
Yeah. And you know what? If I had expected to have gathered all of those tools and all of that knowledge and even those experiences quickly, I would have given up. If it was the long and strong. It's like I had to go. It's like collecting all the pieces for your kite. It's like just gathering the knowledge,
Right.
gathering the experiences, and finding the silver lining. You know, making lemonade when you get given a few lemons. And yeah, it has been really exciting just discovering that. I agree with you. I feel like life throws you these things that at the time seem so humongous, and we can let them really crush us or, you know, identify us or tell us what we are and what we can and can't do. Or you can kind of step outside yourself, and it's just taught me to look at things a little more mechanically overall in everything that I do, instead of being like, oh, I failed, I suck. It's like, oh, it's made me more intelligent in a way, like, okay, let's have a look at what's really going on here. How could I break this down, be more kind and gentle with myself, and find a toolbox? I might not get a result immediately, but I'm willing to be open to the possibilities or to the potential of it, of learning how to do this better or understand this better, whatever it may be.
Mm, yeah,
Goes
so
back to the permaculture garden, doesn't it? It's like, what does my soil need?
that's right.
It's a bit depleted at the moment. It might need to add some, gypsum. Yeah.
I would like to go back to this time, but there are two things in this one. In your journey, in your career, there was a time where you've been twice singing for the Prince of Monaco, which I find fascinating. I want to hear about this story. But also, I would like to hear a bit more about your career as, because you've been, you were about to release your 7th album. It's huge. On the 27th of November. And for about 10 years, you've been singing more like song for children, Tamariki, as we say here. And now your last one, which we all put a clip on it on the editing side, it's more for grown-ups. So yeah, I would love to have also the story behind why children and now going back to grown-ups. But I really want to hear about it. It's Prince of Monaco story.
Yeah. I had a friend who worked on the super yachts in the south of France, and I always had this romantic dream of working on sailboats. And when I was in my early 20s, I had done a little road trip up the east coast of Australia, and I ended up on this little island called Magnetic Island. And I made friends with this guy. He played guitar, so we were jamming. And his name was Pete. And Peter got a job with an Irish family, and it was a husband and wife and their tiny wee daughter who was adorable. She just had this curly, bright orange hair and a little chipmunk Irish accent. And his job was, he was like her nanny and tutor. And he was a deckhand, and it was just them. They were a little unit. It was one small family yacht, and they all sailed it together. But his job was to kind of be a sidekick to this wee girl. And I just thought, wow, what an adventure. And he'd traveled, like he'd just seen so many places in the world. And I loved that it was a sailing yacht and the big sails coming out. It all seemed very romantic. And so I was like, I'm going to do that. And I think I had $50 in my pocket, and I went to France. And I thought, oh, I'll just get a job on a sailing ship. It'll be easy. And I just had so much like fool's courage. And I think I must have been 25. And I got there and quickly learned that you don't get a job on a sailing ship without some sailing experience. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to have to do the super yachts, which were, like ironing sheets onto beds and cleaning toilets. And, I kind of, anyway, I wasn't so into that, but I realized I probably have to do that. And so I made up this CV and it was like, what do I want my CV to focus on? I was like, you know what? I didn't come here to put shoes on caterpillars. I'm going to put on my CV what I want to do while I'm here in France. And I had run a landscaping business and done gardening, and I had trained in massage. And so I had been a mobile massage therapist, and I'm just quite resourceful. And I was like, okay, I want to do some deckhanding. Deck, is it okay if I say that in a Kiwi accent? I want to be a massage therapist and I want to be a musician. So I put those as like my key things. And I was like, oh, I'll cross my fingers and just see what happens. But the next thing you know, I got this job interview. I got this interview with this very wealthy man who owned his own little private yacht in Port Fonvier in Monaco. And I was just working for him and his wife and his son. So it was a bit like my friend Pete, but his son was an adult. And, the key thing that they got me for was to be a massage therapist for the family and for any guests. But if they were entertaining, he was like, he called me Anna Maria. It's like, yeah, sometimes you will do massage and sometimes you will play some music for us. And I'm like, okay. And sometimes you will be the boat hand and sometimes, you will do a little bit of everything. And I'm like, great. So he hired me this great apartment in Monaco. And so he'd just call when he needed me to come on the boat or come and do a massage. It was such a sweet job. It was amazing. And his wife and son would come and go. And so they'd book me in. I'd come and do a massage. Or we'd go out on the boat and go to Saint-Tropez. And, I'd throw out the fenders and bring them back in. And it was just such a sweet job. So anyway, and he was quite old, my boss. And so it was so funny. He was Lebanese and he spoke French. And he'd be doing deals, two phones on his ears, and one would be speaking in Lebanese, and the other one would be speaking in French. MTV would be blaring on a screen, and he had kind of a respiratory issue. So he only ever wanted me to massage his calves and feet and his arms and hands. And so he'd be on the thing, and I'd just only have to massage his legs, and MTV's blaring, and he's like talking in Lebanese, and then on this side. It was such a kooky job. But one day he said to me, no, Maria, my friend Prince Albert is being crowned king and he will come for dinner. And I'm like, of course he is. And from his apartment in Port Fonvier, we looked straight up at the palace. He said, he's coming for dinner and you will sing him a song. If he wants massage, you'll give him massage. And I'm like, okay. So, and I also had to like serve dinner and just I was very resourceful, total Kiwi move, So my job was to answer the door, and all the guests had come, and we were sitting up on this roof, looking over the water and up to the palace. And Prince Albert was the last person to arrive, and I was like, "What do you say to the king?" Like it feels really funny to say, "Your Highness," being a Kiwi. It kind of sounds like it's made up, like out of a fairy tale. So I was like, do I call him Prince Albert, Your Highness? I don't know. And I'd done some research and he'd just gone to Antarctica or the Arctic and followed in his grandfather's footsteps. His grandfather had done the same thing. And so anyway, the doorbell rang and I had to answer it. And I'd opened the door and he's standing there in a really crinkly, scruffy Hawaiian shirt. And we're in France, so I didn't actually realize, I forgot his mum was Grace Kelly and that he was probably raised in America. So he's standing there and he's got 3 bodyguards, like, flanking him, like, one at the back, and they've got earpieces in their suits. And he's in there in a scruffy Hawaiian shirt, and I opened the door and I was like, how was Antarctica? I just totally freaked out.
That's so good.
Why don't I just was awkward, and he was like, "Good," and I was like, "You've got an American accent." He was like, "Yeah, Mom was Grace Kelly," and I was like, "Oh yeah, right. Would you like to come in?" And he's like, "Yes, please." Freaky lady. So we went upstairs, and then my boss had hired like these tango dancers. So everyone had a tango lesson, and I'm like serving meals, but I'm like the extra plus one, tangoing with Prince Albert and all these random people. And then I'm like, go back to clearing tables. It was so random. And he had this amazing 3-piece kind of jazz band. And he's like, Ana Maria, you will sing for us. So I sang Girl from Ipanema. And then ended up giving Prince Albert of Monaco a massage. And people were like, did you? And I'm like, yes. It was a weird scenario. But anyway, it was all perfectly normal. Otherwise, if I don't know, the whole thing is very kooky, being on service and food and dancing and playing music and massage therapist. But then my boss actually flew me back to Monaco 3 summers, like 3 years later. So I'd been away and hadn't worked for him. Was it 2 years or 3 years? And so I went back and I was massage therapist again, and I played a few songs, but he didn't really call on me that much. So I had this apartment right in the center of Monaco, and I made friends, and I wrote a whole new album and had this great time.
Oh, wow.
And then one day he said, my friend, Prince Albert, he's very stressed. He needs a massage. So I got sent to the palace and had to give him a massage at the palace, but I also had to, under strict instruction, to sing him a song. So
Why are you massaging him?
no.
Oh,
So it's like, how are you? I hear you're a bit stressed. It's like, how do I segue into this? I'm like, and I'd written a song. So I wrote him a song. So it was really cool. So I was like, I wrote you a song. And so we kind of sat on the edge of the massage table, which was in the palace gym. And I sang him his song, and he was like, awesome. Thanks for that. And I'm like, all right, I'll give you a massage. So random.
that's awesome.
It was a cool experience. Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad I asked this question. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. So I think Kiwis get it themselves in situations like that where they have kooky adventures. We're a bit resourceful, but yeah.
yeah. Oh, awesome. And so, yeah. So, what about your this path from children to going back to grown up?
Yeah. So before I had kids, I actually was kind of the first inkling that I was a bit of an environmentalist. And I so since having kids, I've just moved. I've done a lot of environmental work, and back in, I don't know when it was. It must have been around 2007 or something like that, or 2006. I'd made friends with a guy who, I think my husband and I, well, I don't know, we met him somewhere. He was an American guy, and he had been working in third world countries bringing water to people who didn't have clean sources of water. And he had this idea about this character and a mascot called Mr. H2O. And he was in the shape of a drop of water. And he wanted Mr. H2O to be an educator, and support kids to understand things. And so I wrote a song called Mr. H2O. You can hear it on Spotify. And it's all about a little drop of water who falls into a puddle, and the puddle's dirty. And so he's like, how can I clean it up? And so he makes friends all around the world, and they all work together. And the song was full of little tips on how to just be a bit more conscious on how we care for Papatūānuku. So the song won an award. I entered it in an award in Australia, and it got first place. It was the winning children's song in the children's category. And so I probably at that point should have got an inkling that I was, going to move into children's music. But and then as part of the first year of my Bachelor of Music, we had to do a children's performance, like a great big kids show, and it was, it's quite a cool offering that this Bachelor does, is it delves into children's music. And it's because the doctor of musicology, who was kind of a key person with that degree, she had written children's music and children's theatre. And so she was personally really passionate about creating good quality content for children. And so I had done my performance, and she was like, you should think about a career in children's music. And I'm like, no, I'm a folk artist. I don't do it. And I'd already made folk albums. I'd won awards in the folk sector. I'd toured, I'd performed. And I was like, no way. I'm not doing children's music. Anyway, when everything happened with Matilda, it was quite scary because she'd been intubated for a very long time, my daughter. And so her lungs were really weak. And if she got exposed to any little flu, her lungs would collapse. And we were on a chopper or an ambulance or zooming to hospital. And so I didn't feel like I could go too far from home in case she ever needed me. But I wanted to still dip my toes and be writing songs. And of course, wherever I went with her, I was just doing that thing. I was just making up songs about mermaids and, unicorns and jumping and, and also incorporating introductory te reo Māori. It's like, oh, what does that mean, mummy? It's like, oh, peki peki means jump. Should we do some jumping? And on the trampoline, it's like, oh, let's write a song about that. So all of a sudden the songs were like tools as well, for children to learn. And I was like, oh, this is fun. So I started moving into children's music because it felt like it supported where I was at as a mother. It supported my community and was filling that need for whatever I was creating to go beyond myself. And it just really worked for our family. And so that was a really cool journey. I got some great funding to make cool music videos. I got nominated, both of my albums got nominated for a New Zealand TUI and best album, best song, best video, music video. So that was really neat. It was kind of like, oh, this is fun. I can do this. But I definitely had a bit of an inner battle about being pigeonholed as a children's artist when I'd worked so hard and so passionately on folk music, which was really where my heart was at as a kind of a grown-up singer-songwriter. And in 2011, before I released my children's album, I had created an album, a bluegrass album, which I toured through North America. Matilda was 2.5, and my husband and I took Matilda after, it was been a really big medical journey, and I wanted to do something that was just exciting, an adventure. And so we toured North America, and I went through permaculture farms and earth houses. So my husband's an architect and builder, and so I wanted him to be inspired by the environments we were in. I wanted a supportive listening audience, and I wanted Matilda to be in nourishing, loving environments where we all got what we needed, and then we could give something back. So everywhere we went, I did a concert, and then everything was koha, so people just gave a donation, and the idea was that we just got enough money to pay for the fuel to get to the next place, but we built this community, and it was phenomenal. We traveled for 3 months from Canada all the way down to San Francisco, across to Colorado, and then back up through Wyoming and Montana back to Canada. And it was just like the trip of a lifetime. Conceived my second child on that trip, which was pretty cool because we planned to. So it was pretty cool to come home with the start of a little brother for Matilda. And and then I had moved, I was moving more into children's music because of having a second child. But I really battled with being pigeonholed. But actually, this is part of that long and strong as well, is having done children's music and built community and the things that children's music offered me and what I learned about how to impart information in a way that's absorbable for adults. I've called on a lot of stuff that I've used as a children's entertainer and educator. And so, that was awesome. So from children's music, little preschool children's music, and early primary music, I started getting more and more into environmentalism, and I started a non-profit in Wānaka called Plastic Bag Free Wānaka, where we started like cup swap schemes and got everybody, we were a big part of campaigning against plastic bags, getting people to use reusables. And I realized there was nothing for children in this space, and children were getting eco-anxiety and worrying about, there being no planet B and the turtles are dying and the dolphins are dying, but nobody's actually telling them anything solution-based. And so I created a character through this trust called Waste Free Wanda, and created a one-woman musical, which I've now performed for about 15,000 children in the deep south of New Zealand.
Wow.
And made music videos and resources and tools, and that was incredible because Waste Free Wanda, her character's really inspired by the 80s. She's got a ghetto blaster. The songs are all modeled off hit songs from the 80s, but I wrote them all. And when I wrote them, they were all too difficult for me to sing. They were belting and chest mechanism, and I'd been in this fluty head mechanism, and I wrote songs I couldn't sing. And it was almost like the universe helping me, going, okay, this is just going to channel through. The songs all just kind of came through, and it was like, you're just going to have to find a way to get there. And so it really got me. It was part of my journey and my searching to figure out how to find this voice that I hadn't found before. And all the songs have got like the toolbox built into them, and then the kids use actions. They sing the song, and then that when they sing the song, it also has the solution embedded in the hook of the song. And so it was like I realized how those three components really helped to emphasize what was needed to educate. And I brought that through into the workshops that I now deliver to adults. So children's music has been a beautiful gift and a really awesome segue. And now I'm about to release my first grown-up album in like a decade. And it's like I'm just feeling really cool about it. Like I just really want to enjoy the journey and not call it anything and just be in this moment. And it's called a record because you're recording a moment in time. And it's, they're all my memories, and I just really want to be with it and enjoy it rather than expecting it to be something or sound like something. And I think that that's part of that same philosophy around how we talk about our voices or how we treat ourselves. It's like, man, this is a way of life. And everything's a position, and a position can be changed. And the position I'm in, I want to stay in and remind myself to be in is kind and gentle. It's like, this isn't a dress rehearsal. You're doing life. This is it. We're in it. So yeah, it's all come in a big full circle, but long and strong.
That's beautiful. And you have an early release, 14 years. Is that right?
Yeah, that's my first single. Yeah.
So what is this? What is this about? Well, how have you been inspired by creating it? Like, what's the story behind this one?
So as I mentioned, I grew up in Invercargill, and my parents divorced when I was maybe 10, and my dad moved to central Otago, and he bought this scrubby piece of land and he built a house on it. And my brothers moved to live with him when they were like adolescent, preteen or early teens. And we were all 1 year apart, and we'd been inseparable. And I just felt this huge void, like not having my brothers close by. And so at 14, I decided to move to live with my dad, which was quite a big pivot, a big change. And I was, going through puberty. I was, new school, finding my identity. And I had really a lot of freedom. Like my dad was, he was running a business, and he was a solo dad with, at 3 teenagers, early teens. And yeah, it was a big time of growth and exploration. And I got this amazing Labrador dog. And we were just inseparable. His name was Benny the White. He was like a white Labrador called Ben. And I just spent a lot of time roaming the waterways and the rivers. And I'd gone down to visit my mum, and somehow I'd got given a beat up guitar, and mum taught me 3 chords. And the first thing I did was write a song. So it was like and I was listening to a lot of old vinyl. I'd been introduced to Jefferson Aeroplane, and I was listening to Fleetwood Mac and Little River Band, and a lot of harmonies and a lot of kind of hippie psychedelic stuff that was kind of trippy. And yeah, it was a really pivotal time of growth. And so, it kind of calls to mind for me imagery of just like roaming the hills with my dog, and playing guitar by the side of the creek, and making up words, and getting into mischief. It was a pretty cool time, and I became really resourceful because I spent a lot of time alone. My brothers were a bit bigger and they went out and got jobs, and they were doing different things. And so, it was a really key time, actually.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing this story. That's nice. What is happening in your world going forward regarding, your, well, you have your album, if you want to talk a little bit more about it, and any other project that you have coming up?
Yeah. I'm really excited to release my album. So I have another single that's coming out next month,
Okay.
which is a song that I wrote that's kind of it sounds very old fashioned. It's very old fashioned sounding, almost nostalgic bluegrass song that called Betty. So I'm singing that as a duet with my friend Ryan Fisherman. So I'm excited about that coming out. And then the album will come out on the 27th of November, which is my dad's birthday.
Oh,
And so that's pretty cool. And interestingly, on that story about my mum and dad, they were divorced for 14 years, and then they got back together.
that's
So
really cool.
my mum and dad are both up here. So yeah, that was kind of a nice long and strong there.
Yeah.
And then so I'm excited to just really enjoy this album. I'm going to play a few festivals, and I'm excited to collaborate with a lot of other musicians and just have a good jam.
Yeah.
Play lots of music.
Nice.
My kids are 11 and 14 now, so I feel like it's really important at this time to just be really present for them. So kind and gentle. The album, it will take me where it's supposed to take me, and I will be intentional about it, but I'm also, I'm not going to push too hard. I want it to be a good ride. And in regards to my vocal workshops, I'm just loving them and finding them so valuable. And my goal is to actually just up level a little bit with them, and bring them to a wider audience of speakers, and just people who use their voice to do what they love, or would like to use their voice to do what they love, and just would like to build that toolbox. So just maybe some seminars and reaching a bigger, broader audience. So excited about that.
Yeah. Is it something that you want to do only in person, or is it something that could be done also online?
Yeah, I think I will. It would be good to do some online too. Yeah.
Mm.
For the friend who's a strategist, I'm just working. It's really nice to find calling people who, we support each other, but just have a few teammates around to help me figure out what that looks like. It's been a lovely learning of mine, as I used to have a bit of a, if you want something done, do it yourself approach to life. And I realized it didn't actually belong to me. It was just parents and grandparents, and it was kind of like everyone being super resourceful because I had to be, but actually I just love, drawing on the skills of others, and we can all become a stronger community by supporting each other and utilizing each other's skill sets. So
Mm.
love that.
Well, that's awesome. And if anyone was interested, maybe they are an organization or they would like to have your workshop coming to them, what would be the best way to reach out?
Oh, yeah, they can totally reach me at Nook Road Productions. So if you look up Nook, I live on Nook Road in Lake Hāwea. So you can find me at nookroadproductions.co.nz. And send me an email. I would love to chat.
Yeah, well, that's great. And it's going to be in the show notes anyway.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. So, and I've got a last question that I like asking. Is there any question that I didn't ask that you would like me to ask you now?
I don't think so. You're such an articulate interviewer. Because reasons. It was a delightful questions. I don't think so. No. I feel like we covered it. There's a bit to process there.
I think you've done, yeah, it was fabulous. Stories, the acting, it made it all like I was living it. It was beautiful. And we've learned a little bit of your life, your highlights, your challenges. It has been a very wonderful interview, and I'm so grateful that you've accepted.
Thank you for having me. What a beautiful offering you've created here. Beautiful service. It's such a neat way. It fits into all of my values. So I love that. Thank you so much, Lily. It's awesome.
My pleasure. All right, well, have a beautiful day.
You
Bye.
too. Take care.